How are you? Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, Jordan. I see you.
You look great. So today, I want to talk about sort of a question that we kind of get, quite a bit, or have gotten quite a bit over the lifetime of summer now. But that has been definitely an evolution to like where we are today, basically. And so, yeah, just kind of wanted to understand like how did we sort of get to where we are today as a sort of front end, and what are we really like? I think that's a question that quite a few people have when they see we're supporting these different protocols and things like that. But what is Summer really, and like yeah, how do we sort of get here in your own words?
Yeah, so Summer obviously started out as Oasis.app back in the day, and the original kind of birth of Oasis.app was obviously through the Maker in the Maker Foundation for the Maker DAO for Maker's multi-collateral DAI launch back in November 2019. Um, like we obviously had the Oasis brand name back from the Oasis Dex days, like the first decentralized Dex back in I think 2017 when that was first launched. Right at the very end of it, it's the first place to trade MKR and so on, and also trade DAI. Um, but yeah, kind of Oasis.app had that journey out of the Maker Foundation into its own entity, still primarily as the default front end for the Maker protocol. And then kind of
Mm.
like into as we entered 2023, we kind of like we started to become more of a curated DeFi experience and offering DeFi to users, not just the Maker protocol. Um, and that like really like the big kind of like reflection point, and that was when we changed the brand and renamed to Summer.fi last summer, like Northern Hemisphere last summer, and
Mm.
yeah, that was when we started to like we supported like more protocols, more networks, um, and kind of took steps forward on our mission to be the best place to borrow and earn DeFi. And I think we're pretty much like we're close to that at the moment with some of the strategies that we have. But yeah, Summer is the place that if you've got assets to lend or to borrow against or to earn against in DeFi, and you want to use like a trusted top tier protocol, Summer is the place you come to do that.
Okay, so I really want to dig into this notion of curation that you mentioned and the protocols. But before we do that, um, can you talk a little bit about like the sort of the transition from the Maker Foundation and dig a little bit deeper into that in terms of, I think Maker has this reputation, let's say, for being a bit more conservative, but also like highly reliable, highly trustworthy, highly like resilient, I guess you could say. And would you say, yeah, like were those values carried on, or like was it a difference of values that emerged when transitioning out of the Maker Foundation, or yeah, how would you say like what did you carry on within Summer, or what did you sort of evolve out of from Maker going into
Yeah.
Summer?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that a lot of those values you touched on about kind of like about trust and kind of patience as well in
Mm.
Maker. Like things were not rushed at any point. It wasn't more important to get it out of the door and potentially be wrong. It's more important for it to be right, and so on. But the kind of trust point of view, building the best product and so on. That ultimately, I think, was part of our DNA and something we have never dropped, and I don't think could drop without kind of changing who we are, and so
Mm.
on. So obviously, when Oasis.app at the time was in Maker and just the Maker front end, we only had very simple functionality. There was no access to any other parts of DeFi, even swapping underneath or anything like that. And yeah, like you kind of touched on it as the trust. Like Maker was one of the first DeFi protocols around initially with single collateral DAI and so on. But yeah, Oasis.app was one of the first kind of best like kind of UX first front ends for DeFi as well.
Mm.
I would say, and yeah, a lot of that like kind of was trust embedded into that. Without trust, like yeah, we wouldn't be the platform that we are today. And there's a lot of other platforms that have gone kind of in a different direction, promising exceedingly high yield and so on, supporting protocols that have only been live like over a weekend or something like that, or suddenly popped up on a weekend.
Mm.
Like that's a very different proposition to what we try and offer here. And that was all that those roots literally, yeah, started back in the maker days. Trust has always been like the central pillar to everything we do. Everything we do is about security, kind of trust, like minimizing the risk to users, basically, in any way we can, while still allowing them to try and take advantage of the market wherever possible.
Wow, that's a great answer. Okay, a lot of things there we can maybe unpack at a different time in terms of how we do that. But the next thing I wanted to touch on at this sort of high level, I guess you could say, is you mentioned this notion of curation. So it's great that we bring all of these principles and stuff into how we build and what we decide to support. But I guess practically, like, if you look at somewhere today, I think we have like, let's see, like 4 or 5 protocols that we support. And obviously, like, for something for me that is quite jarring is like if you go to DeFi Yama, for example, and you look at how many protocols say are like above, like, let's say 5,000 in TVL, it's like literally like thousands of different projects that are there. Um,
Yeah,
and we only are listing like 5, right? So can you talk about what does curation really mean, and like how do we as a team think about like what strategies, what protocols, but also strategies we should support? Like what's the thinking behind that, and what kind of diligence
yeah.
are we doing?
So yeah, so I think there's two angles we can go down, or two routes we could ultimately follow there, right? Like you can be an aggregator, and ultimately kind of build a platform to support almost anything and everything. So that's every protocol, every token, and so on. Um, or you can do what we've done at Summer now, which is create the curated experience, which is try and do the risk management ultimately for on behalf of the users, in some way, to say like kind of like, and we know this from speaking to some of the users, and you speak to a lot of those users yourselves, right? I think these are probably comments from yourself that like as a user say, hey, I delegate my kind of trust to you. If you support a protocol, if you trust a protocol, then I will trust the protocol because you trust it, and so on. So there's a huge amount of value, in that. But yeah, really the curated experience is doing the filtering, ultimately that first layer of filtering for the users, so they know when they come to Summerfy, when they see the products, the pools, the protocols that are on there, they know that they don't have to overthink or think too deeply around the kind of maybe security constraints, or has the protocol been around? Is it fully tested? Is it audited? Is the teams known? And so on, because they know that from as Summer, like we do that for them. There isn't just a humongous long list down the left hand side of like hundreds or not thousands of protocols. There is just like kind of 5 protocols that all crucially as well get the same job done for the user. So when you come to Summerfy, you select whether you want to borrow, whether you want to multiply, whether you want to earn on there. Very kind of clear call to actions in some way. 3 very clear use cases, and the protocols and the strategies and the options that are made available to you then in the UI are very specific to you as a user, and your wants and your needs, at that point. And that's really only possible through curation, because there are tons of protocols in DeFi all trying to maybe do their things a little bit differently, do something unique, like have a USP and so on, to make their mark in DeFi and so on. But what that means is sometimes that protocols work in that slightly different way, which means sometimes accomplishing the goal that you're trying to accomplish is works slightly differently, or the oracles work slightly differently, or the liquidations work slightly differently, and things like that, which makes, from a user point of view, then makes it very confusing. And as a user, you have to learn and understand how every protocol works. Within our curated experience, it doesn't matter which protocol you use, you will get the same user interface for borrow, the same user interface for multiply, the same user interface for earn across all of the protocols, because the way we've set them up, the strategies that we support, the pools, the tokens, the protocols, all will allow you to do the job that you're trying to do in the same way. So from a kind of cognitive overload point of view, you are like kind of free to consider your kind of risk parameters on there, irrespective really of the protocol that you're using. So whether it's
Hmm.
ultimately between Aave or Spark or Morpho or Maker, if you're looking at borrow rates and so on, or even Arjuna, you know that like, okay, I can just compare the borrow rate. I don't really need to understand the protocol. Maybe I want to uncheck one or two protocols if you just have a complete bias towards certain protocols and so on. But you know actually that you can just compare apples with apples. And under the hood, it may work ever so slightly differently, but Summer.fi has removed all of that complexity for you. And you know you've got a deposit option, you borrow option, your borrow rate, the amount of money you're making, the amount of money it's costing you, either in like kind of collateral terms, in dollar terms, and so on. And then you know that actually when you've got the kind of automation strategies as well, again, they all work the same on top of the protocols. Even if the protocols work a little bit differently, the concepts of all the functionality is exactly the same. And again, that's really only possible through a curated experience by us able to kind of focus on these protocols and build that functionality into these protocols instead of trying to build a one size fits all um, experience, which just gives you the core functionality of the underlying protocols, which is what would happen if we went down the aggregation route and supported every protocol possible.
Hmm. Okay, that's a brilliant explanation. What one the sort of last question I have for you, as it relates to all of these different protocols, why we have these protocols, how we emerge as a front end that has so many assets, I guess, locked, quote unquote, which I think would be great for people to understand right away. Is something you haven't touched on yet is the power of being able, like, not having a silo. So for example, if you're just on Aave or just on Spark, like, you only have access to those like markets, let's say, or strategies in some sense. On Summer, is it possible for users to like go between very easily? Like, let's say they have a position on Spark, can they go to Aave, can they go to Morpho? Like, how easily can they sort of thinking about the right word. What is, like, be a chameleon or something? Like, going
Like,
between the different things.
yeah, yeah. So we have the concept of like kind of position swap functionality in there, which is effectively like sometimes called refinance as well. So if you have a position on one protocol or even just a position within a protocol, you could swap that for another position inside that same protocol or inside a different protocol as well, all within like one or two clicks, depending on the kind of the allowance flows and so on you need to set, depending on how you used the product previously. But yeah, if you've got an ETH divolt on Maker, for example, and you want to swap that to Spark or Morpho or Aave or something like that, you can go and swap it to say ETH USDC. But maybe the USDC rate is actually 2 or 3% less than the DAI borrow rate on Maker, for example, at the moment, or just generally USD might be cheaper, or USDT or whatever it is. But yeah, we have this concept of position swap, just allowing you to go and change the type of position. Just like if you went to Uniswap and you said, hey, I want to swap my ETH to wrap BTC, for example, you would select ETH, you would select wrap BTC. It's the same concept on Summer. Really, you have your current position. You would select the option to do a position swap, and it would actually present you the different options. One of the great things about this as well is you can go to earn positions, for example. So you can go from, say, a multiply position to an earn
Mm.
position. So if you want to like get out of a volatile market into a fairly stable market,
Mm.
just earning a fairly safe yield, that's possible. If you want to like kind of, oh, maybe the market's picking up again, I need to get out of my safe, maybe like DAI yield loop position or something like that, or ETH yield loop position. I now want to like increase my exposure to ETH. You can go do that in one click as well.
Mm.
So yeah, it's super simple. It's super easy, and yeah, it's all available in Summer.
Wow, incredible. All right, Chris, thank you so much for
Yeah, I mean,
taking this in. And
actually,
yeah,
yeah, I think actually just one thing, because
yeah.
I'm conscious that like you asked before about how we select the protocols and so on. I don't
Mhm.
think I touched on that. But really, yeah, I think I touched on it loosely, but just to kind of finalize and finish off on that one, maybe it's just very quickly that
Mhm.
when it comes to selecting the protocols on Summer, we obviously don't onboard a huge amount of protocols. Like we don't onboard a protocol a week or anything like that. Again, it's that curated experience, and there's a couple of things that we have to be sure of internally from the protocol point of view. Some of them are through kind of like a user experience point of view, and some of them are to do with security, and some of them are actually just kind of like gut feeling sometimes as well. So kind of at the very top level from the user experience point of view, it is like, does this protocol help users get the job done that they're using Summer.fi for? So if they want to borrow against their assets, if they want to multiply their assets, if they want to earn on their assets, does this protocol help them achieve those goals? Does it help them do that in a kind of risk minimalized way as well? Because that's incredibly important. Um, and yeah, like if that protocol isn't like doesn't fit into the kind of Summerify stack very easily, then we won't support it. Like if it isn't really one for the borrow, multiply, or earn stuff, then we leave it. The other thing is then kind of security. Like, do we know the team? Have we got to know the team? Is the team even like known to anyone? For example, is the like
Hmm.
repository like, and then it's like, how long have they been working in this? Is this a brand new project? Have they come from a previous project? Were they well known? Is the previous projects well known? Were the previous projects still good, like hack free and so on, exploit free? Um, and things like that. Have they done all the audits? Who are the audit companies that did them, and so on? Like how many
Hmm.
like bugs did they find in the first audit, etc. And then the final one really is we right within the team, kind of within the product team, we always have this same kind of question as well. Like, would we use that protocol? Would we use that product if we supported it on Summerfy? And if there's
Yeah.
nobody in the team that would use that product on like within the product team, then more than likely it's not going to get used. And that's the kind of sometimes the most critical question as well. There's always some questions around kind of like legal side as well on that side, which is normally like yeah different people kind of making those calls and so on. But at a product level, like yeah, like if there was nobody in the team that would use that protocol or has any sense of feeling of wanting to use that protocol, for example, then it's actually quite unlikely that we would support it on Summer. And again, we're not chasing the kind of 1,000% APYs for 1 week at like maybe a 20% risk that users lose all their funds. Um,
Hmm.
we have like a lot of users on Summerfy that have been users of Summerfy for several years, had positions open for at least 12 months, um, and so on. Like and yeah, we don't chase after protocols that might be forgotten about in like kind of 2 months time and so on.
Lovely.
But yeah, that's just that. Just want to touch on that before we finished.
Yeah, no, that's I think this will be incredibly helpful, especially for new people that might be coming in and wanting to understand like, yeah, what is summer like, and why are the things that are on here or on there, why are they there basically. So yeah, thank you so much for the time, and yeah, hope everybody enjoys the video.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoy.